Happy Sunday. So I am heading out to move the sheep. I had just been in the kitchen peeling potatoes with the kids, but I need to move the sheep again, and so I figured I would take you for a walk with me. So I want to show you something. So our sheep have actually already been in this field, so you can't really tell, especially because we've gotten rain, so a lot of their manure washed away. But one of the reasons we have these lovely animals is because free fertilizer. They fertilize our field, and because of the way we move them, it is highly concentrated in one spot, so they all fertilize like where we want them. So this is our lane, or will eventually be like the width of our lane in our field. So it'll come all the way down from our house, and we'll have posts on the other side as well, and we will rotate our animals in paddocks off of the sides here. This is our hay field, so we're just kind of letting that grow. Just to kind of show you how it's doing. That should be hayed in about a couple of weeks or so. So I'm walking out to where the sheep are. I figured I'd just take you with me. The weather here is super unpredictable. It was very, very rainy. So whereas when we first moved, we had 2 years of severe drought. To kind of give you a picture, when we were in drought, we had a 1/2 inch of rainfall over the course of 6 months. And it greatly affected a lot of people's cattle and livestock operations. And I think coming from the city, I really had no idea what all of that meant. And so this is, in some ways, for my city friends to show the impact that things like the weather have on the entire nation's food supply. So most of the food supply for our country comes from just very specific areas of the country. And when we have something like this where it affects us so deeply, it will end up, affecting us for years to come. People are forced in the years of drought like that. A lot of people were selling off their livestock because they didn't have enough hay or grass to support them. And then they ended up, it takes a long time to rebuild your herd or your flocks after something like that happens. And then it will affect the meat prices. So whereas they were selling off all of their livestock for meat or to other producers, then they don't have the ability to replace that in the future, and it affects all the meat prices and everything. It affects everything. So I'm going to just kind of show you what we've been doing. So when they get out of an area, this is a little bit more grazed than we would like, but it looks kind of something like this lately. And then because I wanted my lane trimmed, so I didn't have to walk through grass and ticks, and this was not our main pasture area, I had Sean just come through and mow it whenever we went through one of our paddocks. So this was yesterday, day before yesterday, where they were. And then these are actually our chicken tractors that we built, that we were finishing, and we had an extra shade cloth, and before we finished their shade structures, we just put that over the top and we just move it to the next paddock that they're going to be in. The paddock they're going into already has shade, so it won't need it. So we'll actually take one of these sides down and we'll move them separately into our front pasture. But having a chicken tractor that you throw shade cloth over is actually not a bad idea for a sheep shelter. Our hope is actually to build something very similar and to not have hardware cloth on the back or the front. There will be no set door area on the front. And on the inside, we'll actually put their mineral feeders will be attached on the inside, so they'll always have access to fresh minerals, baking soda, and what they need on the inside here. But we'll also have open areas for them to rub off their coats, because we have hair sheep. And so this will allow them, if we put like broom brush handles down or even just T-posts across, they will rub their backs against it and they'll get all that wool off. So one of the things when you're rotating your animals is if you're rotating them into a paddock that does not have areas for them to rub off, it can be harder for them to get their coats off. And that's something we have learned the hard way. So this is where they are today. They had a very rainy last night. So speaking of the rain, hello girls. How did it go last night? You all look good. So you can see that they made it through just fine. They were moved in here last night. And then they're ready to move where there's shade. So I'm going to do that. You know what we're doing. Hi, baby. Clara ended up naming this new little one Kit Kat. Her and her best friend named it. And she is super cute. She carries a lot of the coloring of her father. This little black and white boy that just laid down, his name is Tux, after Tuxedo and his mama's lady. So you can see a lot of the coloring that we got out of these new babies came from their dad. We chose him for a lot of good reasons, but he also makes some awfully pretty lambs. Okay, so in comparison, so I say it was really rainy last night. We've had a lot of rain in the last, gotta turn off my electric charger, in the last few weeks, last month or so. So in comparison to us receiving a ½ inch of rainfall in the course of 6 months, when we, for the first 2 years when we moved here, sorry, I had to undo the fence, and I needed both hands. This year we have received something like 16 to 18 inches of rain in a month, something like that, some crazy amount. It's been a very rainy spring. And we needed it so much. You could tell in the beginning that even when we had tons of rain, that there was, the ground was just so thirsty. It had like, it was just so aching to be fed. So you guys are waiting. So when you train your sheep to move from paddock to paddock, it doesn't take that long to train them, and then they are so ready to do that when it's time. Sorry, I needed my hands again. Okay, girls. So they just come into the new paddock. They train the babies. The actual moving process does not take a lot of time, and then we bring over fresh water for them, their minerals, and if this did not already have shade areas in it, because there's a lot of shade that they get later in the day from these trees, then we would move the shade structures into here, and they're clearing our lane for us. And this has been working well for us this year, so that Sean does not have to keep the lane clear, and we can put up some fencing when they're done. So that's what we have going on here. Everybody's doing well. We are we're realizing that within the last, when did we get them? 2 years, we have tripled our flock and improved our genetics from the beginning, which is wonderful. We've learned a lot through our mistakes and through the whole process, and let me finish connecting this fence and then I'll kind of walk back with you and tell you what we've learned. Okay, that's done. So they will be in there until tonight, and then we will move them. So when I'm all done, I just turn my electric charger on and they're set to go for the day. Okay. There's a lot that we've learned, like since we've been here, just life has a way of teaching you. But I feel like just jumping in and doing it to the best of our ability in the beginning has given us the opportunity to really get to know through our difficulties, what things would make it easier on our farm to continue doing what we're doing. Our goal is to see this area down here, is to get proper fencing along the side of our lane so that we can connect to and to have semi-permanent paddocks. I say semi because they're going to be larger paddocks that we can still string electric wire into and make the paddock smaller and still be careful about the way that we're rotating our animals. But then if we get animals that get loose, they won't be just going wherever they want to. They'll be still contained within a larger area, and we have some plans about how we want to do that. So we'll be working on that this year. Down the road, I also would like to get more permanent water out in the fields. Getting water to where you're rotating your livestock is such a big deal. But it's also expensive to send watering lines out there. So our hope is to have at least frost-free hydrants out here that are easier to water from. Buying lots and lots of hoses is also expensive. So if you have the ability to put in permanent waters or a watering system, that's great. But at least now we have a better understanding of where we need our waters. Whereas in the beginning we had suspicions about what might be best. Now we actually know what would really work out well for us. In the areas that are furthest away from our house, we wanted to set up more frost-free watering systems, like the automatic waterers where we aren't refilling them all the time. Our cattle are actually currently at a neighbor's property that we're leasing, and we were using that space to give some heavy fertilization and also use as a sacrifice lot while we were regrowing all of our area that we needed to hay. And that's been super helpful. And then also the fact that they have automatic waterers that were installed there, so we did not have to go over to the neighbors every single day and refill waters. That's been great. So we're super grateful for that. You can see as I'm walking how the grass already gets greener as you get away from where they grazed, and it really doesn't take that long to recover. This would not actually be this low, but we mowed it. If you were rotating them, the ideal actually is that they would have more space than what they have right now and graze it less than what they're grazing right now, and that would be more beneficial long term. And so when we do our paddocks and set them up, it's with the intention of making moves just so much easier. So even though that didn't take very long to move, the actual setting up of the fence, it still doesn't take a tremendous amount of time, but it is time out of your day to do that. And so if you're experiencing a drought or freezing weather, it can be a little bit harder to get those electric netting fence spikes in the ground. So we know which things we like better and when it's best to move them, and just after using them for a couple of years, what works out well for us. But so far they're doing well. The sheep are all doing well. And by next spring, this property will have maxed out after our next breeding season the amount of sheep that we want to keep permanently on this property. So at that point, what we'll start doing is selling off some of our flock every year, whether it be for breeding purposes or for somebody else to start their own flock, because some people are looking for sheep that are trained to hot wire and aren't giving a whole lot of inputs. We don't constantly worm our sheep because of the way that they're rotated. They don't need it. They are off the area that usually causes issues for them, and they don't come back to it until after that cycle, that parasite cycle, is over. So they're all trained, so to speak, to hot wire and trained to a rotational grazing program, and they've been exposed to kids, and they've been exposed to livestock guardian dogs, and there are people that want to start like what we're doing, and we will start selling off our sheep to either them, or the type of sheep we have are great for meat. Because they're hair sheep, they don't have as much lanolin in their wool, and so the flavor is a lot milder than sometimes what people will think of when they think of like mutton. And so this will be like another source of good clean meat for people that we can sell off of our farm as well. But it's kind of exciting to think that within a 3-year window we will have more than quadrupled our flock size, and have gotten to the point where our sheep are now helping to bring in income to our farm. And our program, our regenerative agriculture program, is just improving more and more. Oh, you found a cicada? Let me see. It's also a cicada year, so the kids are finding them everywhere. I think it's super cool. What does Catherine say? They're her what?
Friends.
She says they're my friends. I don't know if they're our friends, but a lot of people like some misconceptions quickly about cicadas. These ones only come, I'm trying to think if ours are the 17-year ones. I'll have to look again. But we find all over the place all the holes in the ground where they've come out of the ground. And so the really positive thing about that for people that are focusing on growing their pastures and trying to hold on to as much water as they can is that they aerate your soil. And so you're able to collect more water in those little areas that they came out of the ground all over the place. So you're holding more water in your pasture, in your field, because they have like a die-off. They add a lot more organic matter just to the land overall. And then because we have 1 million chickens, not really, just like 100, they also end up providing food for like the animals around here. So they really haven't been super problematic. The only thing that might cause a problem in the future is they will sometimes create scarring on your fruit trees. So we have covered the trees that we planted, and we're hoping that they don't cause a lot of problems with them, but we'll see down the road. So far they have not been they haven't really been terrible. You can hear them. I don't know if you can hear it in the video, but like it's like a wind of cicada noise in the areas where there's a lot of trees. It's kind of interesting. I feel like our kids will always remember the cicada year when they were little. Oh, speaking of sheep, so we keep our rams in an area away from our girls, and so we just use 16 by 16 foot cattle panels, and then we attach them with like this, I think I've shown it in other videos, like this little screw shaped wire piece that holds them together, and we just go out and move them a few times a day, and they rotate as well onto fresh pasture. They're almost done here, and then they'll be moving on to another area, and they have a shade area in their ram pen. But very soon we are going to be taking our older rams out from their mothers before they reach breeding maturity themselves, and some of them are quite big. So from what I've heard, the rams, there's times where like rams have been known to breed their mothers at like 2 months old, like between 2 and 4 months old. So we want to get them out of there at the beginning of June. They've all learned from their moms how to graze on pasture, and we're going to just put them together separately so that they're not breeding our girls. And we are hoping this year to introduce a new ram to all of the new ladies that we have, so that he can also bring those great genetics into our farm. Things that we want to do going forward with our sheep program is we want to learn more about, we want to learn how to do a better job trimming their hooves, and at some point to get, sorry, I have kids screaming at me from the house. We want to get like a sheep handling area. So when we only had a few sheep, it wasn't that big of a deal, but now as we're looking towards in the spring having around 40 and their lambs, we want to have a facility on the property that we can more easily sort them and, you know, treat them if we need to. Although we try not to do as much with our sheep, there are times where you have to take a look at them, take a look at their hooves, examine them, make sure that they're in good health. We have a couple sheep that don't shed off as well as the others, and so as much as they typically don't need to be sheared, we would like to get them sheared just so they can lose that old coat and be more comfortable in the summer. The other ones, all the newer ones, seem to be doing that a lot on their own, but I just like to be able to have a facility that we can run them through and do what we need to do with them and have a specific dedicated area for that. And so that's something that down the road is a goal for us. That and getting more permanent watering systems out into the fields, and our fencing. Those are big goals for us this year to work on within, you know, the next year, implementing on our farm so that our program can just be easier to manage. I've been working outside of the house full time this year, and it's just a lot to juggle when you're homeschooling 6 kids, running a farm, and working full time and homesteading. So we're just looking for things that will make it easier for us to manage this in a more timely and efficient way. So every year we're trying to make it better and better. Do I regret starting the way that we did? No. I feel like we learned a lot by just beginning, and, you know, just the benefits of all of that knowledge and growth, and, you know, our animals are doing well through that whole process. I am really grateful and proud of all the work that we've done as a family to improve in this area. So anyhow, that's just an update on how we're doing. I hope you enjoyed the walk. I'm going to get back in and have some pancakes, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your Sunday. So God bless you. Like, subscribe, and share to Full and Family Farm.